Marry me, and no one will ever touch your life again. The words didn't sound like a promise. They sounded like a command. Emily Carter stared at the man across from her, rain dripping from her hair onto the polished marble floor, her heartbeat loud enough to drown out everything else. 3 minutes ago, she had been standing in the hallway outside her apartment, hands shaking, trying to decide if she could survive another night. Now she was here, in a building she'd never seen before, signing papers she didn't understand, marrying a stranger whose eyes held no warmth, only something deeper, colder, older. Alexander Voss didn't smile. He didn't rush her. He simply watched, as if he already knew what she would choose. You don't have to explain anything, he said softly, his voice smooth, controlled. Just decide if you want this to end. End. The word echoed in her mind. The shouting. The fear. The constant feeling of being watched, of being trapped in a life that kept shrinking around her. Her fingers tightened around the pen. Don't think. Don't hesitate. Sign. The moment the ink touched the paper, something shifted. Not loud. Not visible. But real. Like a door closing somewhere far behind her. Alexander glanced at the document once, then at her. For a split second, his gaze softened, not with kindness, but with recognition. As if something had just been confirmed. It's done, he said. And just like that, everything changed. The drive to her apartment took exactly 11 minutes. She counted every second, her hands clenched in her lap, her mind racing with questions she didn't dare ask. Alexander sat beside her, silent, composed, as if the storm outside had nothing to do with him. When the car stopped, he stepped out first, opening her door with a precision that felt almost rehearsed. You'll wait here, he said, not looking at her. This won't take long. Before she could respond, he was gone, moving toward the building with a calm that didn't match the tension in the air. Emily watched through the rain-streaked window as shadows shifted near the entrance, as silhouettes approached him, and then stopped. Not argued. Not resisted. Stopped. A few seconds passed. Then the front door opened. And closed. Silence followed. Thick. Unnatural. The kind of silence that made her chest tighten. When Alexander returned, his expression hadn't changed. Not a single detail. It's handled, he said simply, sliding back into the seat. Handled. Emily swallowed, her voice barely above a whisper. What does that mean? For the first time, he looked directly at her. Really looked. And something in his eyes made her breath catch, not fear, not exactly. Something heavier. It means, he said, his tone quiet but absolute, your life no longer belongs to anyone who would harm it. The car pulled away. Emily turned, glancing back at the apartment building that had once felt like a prison. The lights flickered. Then went dark. Completely. Her stomach dropped. That wasn't normal. None of this was normal. She faced forward again, her pulse quickening. Who are you? She asked. Alexander didn't answer immediately. Instead, he leaned back slightly, his gaze shifting toward the city skyline ahead, towers rising into the night like silent witnesses. For a moment, the world outside seemed to bend around that view. Then, almost to himself, he spoke. You'll understand soon enough. The car passed through an intersection. Every traffic light turned green before they reached it. No cars crossed their path. No one slowed them down. Emily noticed. Of course she noticed. Her fingers curled into the fabric of her coat as a realization began to form, slow and terrifying. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't luck. This was control. And she had just married the man who held it. The city did not wake up the way Emily remembered. It adjusted. That was the only word she could find for it as the car moved deeper into streets that suddenly felt too clean, too quiet, too aware of the man sitting beside her. People did not stare at Alexander Voss. They avoided looking at him at all, as if even a glance required permission. Emily pressed her hand lightly against the cold window, watching storefronts blur past, her reflection faint against the glass, pale and uncertain. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Alexander did not turn. "Home," he said. The word should have felt comforting. It did not. The car slowed in front of a building that did not look real. It rose 20 stories into the night, all glass and steel, but there was something else beneath it, something older hidden in the way the lights glowed too evenly, the way the entrance doors opened before they fully stopped. No doorman greeted them. No one needed to. As Emily stepped out, the air itself felt different, cooler, sharper, like the moment before a storm breaks. Inside, the lobby stretched wide and silent, marble floors reflecting the ceiling lights like still water. A man in a dark suit approached from across the room, his pace quick but controlled. He stopped several feet away and lowered his head. Not a nod. Not politeness. Something deeper. "Everything is prepared," he said, his voice low. Prepared. Emily glanced at Alexander, but he had already started walking, expecting her to follow. She did. Of course she did. The elevator doors opened the second they approached. No button was pressed. No one spoke. The ride up felt longer than it should have, the silence pressing in around her as numbers climbed higher and higher. 15. 16. 17. Her pulse matched each floor. When the doors opened, it was not a hallway that greeted them. It was an entire floor. Private. Empty. Waiting. Emily stepped out slowly, her shoes soft against the polished wood, her gaze moving from the floor to the walls to the windows that stretched from one end of the city to the other. She could see everything from here. Streets. Lights. Movement far below. It felt less like an apartment and more like a vantage point. Like someone had built it to watch. "This is yours now," Alexander said behind her. She turned sharply. "Ours," he corrected, his tone calm, final. Emily let out a quiet breath, shaking her head slightly. "You do not even know me." The words slipped out before she could stop them. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he walked past her, stopping near the window, his figure framed against the city skyline. "I know enough," he replied. Enough. The word lingered in the air. Emily folded her arms, trying to ground herself, trying to find something normal in a situation that refused to be. "You said my life is safe now," she said. "From who?" Alexander turned his head slightly, not fully facing her. "From anyone who would try to take control of it." His voice did not rise. It did not need to. Emily swallowed, her thoughts racing. "And what about you?" she asked quietly. "Do you control it?" That made him pause. A small pause. But real. He looked at her then, fully this time, and something in his expression shifted, subtle but undeniable. Not anger. Not surprise. Something like interest. "That depends," he said. "On whether you understand what you agreed to." A chill ran through her. "You said it would end things," she replied. "You did not say anything else." "Because most people do not ask," he said. Emily held his gaze, refusing to look away this time. "I am not most people." Silence settled between them again, but it felt different now, heavier, charged with something unspoken. Outside, the city lights flickered faintly, like distant signals passing through the dark. And for the first time, Emily realized something that made her breath catch. From up here, nothing moved without being seen. Not a car. Not a person. Not a single shift in the rhythm of the streets below. She looked back at Alexander, her voice barely above a whisper. "You were not exaggerating, were you?" He did not smile. He did not soften. He simply met her eyes and answered, "No." The silence did not last. It never did in a place like this. Emily felt it before she saw it, a subtle shift in the air, like the city itself had taken a breath and was holding it. Somewhere below, lights flickered again, not randomly, not like a power issue, but in sequence, as if responding to something unseen. She stepped closer to the window, her reflection merging with the skyline, her pulse quickening as the realization settled deeper into her bones. This was not just a view. It was control. "How long have you had this?" she asked, her voice quieter now, more cautious. Alexander did not move from where he stood. "Long enough," he replied. That was not an answer. Emily turned, frustration threading through her fear. "You keep saying things like that," she said. "You keep answering without actually explaining anything." For a moment, he said nothing. Then he walked toward her, slow, measured, each step deliberate, until the distance between them closed to just a few feet. Up close, the difference between them felt sharper. She could see it now, the way his presence seemed to pull the room into alignment, the way the silence obeyed him. "You want explanations," he said, his voice low, steady. "But explanations require context. And context requires time." Emily held her ground, even as her instincts told her to step back. Then, "Start with something simple," she said. "Why me?" That question lingered longer than the others. It did not bounce off him. It stayed. Alexander's gaze shifted slightly, not away, but inward, as if measuring something unseen. "Because you chose," he said finally. Emily frowned. "I chose to survive." "Exactly," he replied. The words landed heavier than she expected. He turned away again, his attention drifting back to the city below. "Most people hesitate," he continued. "They wait. They hope things will change on their own. You did not." Emily crossed her arms, trying to steady herself. "That does not explain why you were there," she said. "At that moment. At that door." Alexander did not answer immediately. Outside, a black car slowed at the intersection far below, then continued without stopping, as if guided by something invisible. "There are patterns in this city," he said at last. "Movements. Decisions. Moments where everything could shift in one direction or another." Emily's brow furrowed. "You make it sound like you were watching me." Another pause. Smaller this time. "But enough." "I was aware of you," he said. A chill moved through her. Aware. Not watching. Not following. Something else. Something broader. "That is not better," she said under her breath. Alexander almost smiled. Almost. It was not meant to be. The room fell quiet again, but this time it was not empty. It was full of things unsaid. Emily turned back to the window, her mind racing, trying to piece together fragments that refused to form a clear picture. "If you control this city," she said slowly, "then nothing happens here without you knowing." It was not a question. Alexander did not correct her. That was answer enough. Her stomach tightened. "So you knew," she continued. "You knew what was happening to me." The words came out softer now, less accusation, more realization. Behind her, Alexander's voice remained calm. "I knew enough to recognize the moment when it would change." Emily closed her eyes for a second, letting that sink in. Not rescue. Not chance. Timing. When she opened them again, the city looked different. Not bigger. Not brighter. Just clearer. Like she had been seeing it wrong her entire life. She turned back to him slowly. "And now?" she asked. "What happens now?" This time, Alexander did not look at the city. He looked at her. Directly. Fully. And whatever answer he gave, she knew it would not be something she could walk away from. "Now," he said quietly, "you learn what it means to stand where you are standing." Emily felt her breath catch. "And if I do not want that?" she asked. A dangerous question. She knew it the second it left her mouth. But she needed to hear the answer. Needed to understand the rules of a world she had stepped into without seeing it. Alexander held her gaze, unblinking, unwavering. That choice, he said slowly, ended the moment you signed your name. The word settled into the space between them like something permanent. Unmovable. And for the first time since she stepped into this place, Emily understood one thing with absolute clarity. She had escaped one life. But this one had already claimed her? There are rules here, Alexander said, and the way his voice settled into the room made it feel less like a warning and more like a law that had always existed, long before Emily ever stepped into this world. She stood where she was, her arms slowly lowering to her sides, her mind still trying to catch up with everything he had just said, everything she had just realized. Rules meant structure. Structure meant this was not chaos. And somehow, that made it more unsettling. Then tell me, she said, her voice steady but quiet, because right now it feels like I walked into something I cannot see. Alexander watched her for a moment, as if weighing how much to reveal, how much she was ready to understand. Then he moved past her, not toward the city this time, but toward the center of the room where a long table sat untouched, perfectly arranged as if waiting for a meeting that never ended. You are not wrong, he said. You cannot see it yet. Emily turned to follow him with her eyes. Yet, she repeated softly. That means you expect me to. He stopped at the edge of the table, resting his hand lightly against its surface. You will, he replied. Because now you are part of it. The word settled heavily. Not visiting. Not protected. Part of it. Emily took a slow breath, stepping forward, closing some of the distance between them. You said I agree to something, she said. But I did not know what I was agreeing to. Alexander nodded once, acknowledging the truth in that. That is correct, he said. But the agreement still stands. Emily felt a flicker of frustration rise again, sharper this time. That does not make sense, she said. A choice without understanding is not a real choice. For the first time, something shifted in his expression, something almost human, almost reflective. You have to. Emily felt her breath catch slightly, not because of the words themselves, but because of how accurately they described her. She had not wanted to face anything. But she had. Every time. Silence settled again, but this time it felt different. Not suffocating. Not empty. Something in between. Something building. If I am part of this, she said slowly, then I need to understand it. Alexander nodded once. You will, he said. But understanding comes with exposure. Emily frowned slightly. Exposure to what? She asked. Alexander's gaze shifted briefly toward the far end of the room, toward a set of doors she had not noticed before. To the truth of what exists beneath what you see, he said. Emily followed his gaze, her heart beginning to beat just a little faster. And what is that? She asked quietly. Alexander looked back at her, his expression calm, unshaken, but something deeper moved beneath it, something that felt like the edge of a revelation. Everything that has been hidden from you, he said. The doors at the end of the room unlocked with a soft, precise click. Emily froze, her breath catching as the sound echoed through the space. Slowly, the doors began to open. And whatever waited beyond them, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. This was the moment her world would change again. The doors did not swing open quickly. They moved slowly, deliberately, as if whatever lay beyond them carried weight that even silence had to respect. Emily stood frozen, her breath shallow, her eyes fixed on the widening gap as a dim, colder light spilled into the room. It was not brighter than the city behind her. It was different. Muted. Controlled. This is where you stop seeing the surface, Alexander said quietly from behind her, his voice steady, unaffected by the shift in atmosphere. Emily swallowed, her instincts pulling in two directions at once, one urging her to step back, the other pulling her forward. She did not move. Not yet. The doors opened fully. Beyond them was not another room in the traditional sense. It was a corridor, long and perfectly aligned, its walls lined with dark panels that reflected no light, only shapes. At the far end, figures stood. Still. Waiting. Emily felt her pulse spike, not from fear alone, but from recognition. Not of faces. Of presence. These were not ordinary people. She could feel it the same way she felt Alexander without needing to look at him. Controlled. Measured. Watching. They have been here the entire time, Alexander continued. You just did not know where to look. Emily took a slow step forward before she could stop herself. The moment her foot crossed the threshold, something shifted again. The air changed. It grew heavier, denser, like stepping into a space where every movement mattered more. The figures at the end of the corridor moved in unison. Not closer. Just enough to acknowledge her. Heads lowered. Not to her. To Alexander. Always to him. Her breath caught. She glanced back over her shoulder, but he was already walking past her, his pace calm, unhurried, as if this was the most natural thing in the world. Of course it was for him. He belonged here. Emily followed, each step quieter than the last, her senses sharpening as they moved deeper into the corridor. The figures became clearer. Men and women, dressed in dark, precise clothing, their expressions neutral but their posture exact, disciplined. No one spoke. No one questioned. They simply existed within a structure she was only beginning to see. When Alexander reached them, they stepped aside instantly, creating a path without being asked. One of them, a woman with sharp features and steady eyes, spoke without lifting her gaze. Everything is secured, she said. Her voice was calm, controlled, but there was something beneath it. Respect. Not the kind given freely. The kind enforced by reality. Emily felt it settle into her chest. This was not an illusion. This was not performance. This was order. Alexander did not stop. Of course it is, he replied, his tone even. The woman did not respond. She did not need to. Emily hesitated for half a second before stepping forward again, passing through the line they had formed. As she did, she felt their awareness shift toward her, subtle but undeniable. Not curiosity. Assessment. Measuring. The realization sent a quiet chill through her. She was being evaluated. Not as a guest. Not as someone passing through. As something that now belonged here. The corridor opened into a larger space, circular, enclosed, with a ceiling that arched high above like the inside of a cathedral, but without any ornament, without warmth. In the center stood a single table. Not decorated. Not cluttered. Just present. Alexander stopped at its edge, resting his hand lightly against the surface once again, the same gesture he had made before, as if it connected him to everything around him. Emily slowed behind him, her gaze moving across the room, taking in the symmetry, the silence, the way everything seemed to wait for something to begin. What is this place? She asked, her voice softer now, instinctively lowered in the presence of something she did not fully understand. Alexander did not turn. This is where decisions are made, he said. The word settled into the space, echoing slightly against the high walls. Emily felt her breath catch again. Decisions. Not discussions. Not meetings. Something more final. She stepped closer, her eyes narrowing slightly as pieces began to fall into place. You said I would learn, she said. Is this the part where I do? For a moment, there was no answer. Then Alexander finally turned to face her, his expression calm but sharper now, more defined, as if whatever came next mattered in a way nothing else had yet. This is the part where you realize, he said slowly, that nothing in your life moving forward will be accidental. Emily held his gaze, her heart steady but heavy with the weight of what she was beginning to understand. And if I make the wrong decision? She asked. The question hung between them, fragile but necessary. Alexander's eyes did not soften. They did not harden either. They simply remained what they had always been. Certain. You will not be allowed to, he said. The answer was immediate. Absolute. Emily felt the word settle into her chest, not as fear, but as clarity. This was not a place where mistakes existed. Only outcomes. Behind her, she could feel the presence of the others, still, silent, watching. Waiting. And for the first time, Emily understood exactly what had changed the moment she signed her name. She had not just been protected. She had been placed. Then watch carefully, Alexander said, and the moment his voice settled into the room, everything shifted again, not physically, but in focus, as if the space itself had been waiting for that exact command to come to life. Emily felt it instantly, a subtle tightening in the air, like invisible lines snapping into place around her. The figures standing along the outer edge of the circular room straightened slightly, their attention sharpening, not toward her, but toward him. Always toward him. Alexander moved his hand across the surface of the table, not touching anything specific, yet something responded. A faint glow emerged from beneath the smooth surface, spreading outward in precise patterns, forming lines, grids, intersections. Emily stepped closer without realizing it, her eyes locking onto the shifting display as shapes began to form, not random, not abstract, but familiar. Streets. Blocks. Movement. It was the city. Not a map. Something more alive. She could see traffic flowing, lights flickering, entire sections pulsing with subtle energy, as if every part of it was connected to something deeper. This is not surveillance, Alexander said quietly, as if reading the question forming in her mind. This is structure. Emily's breath caught slightly as she watched a section of the display brighten, then dim, reacting to something happening in real time. You can see everything, she whispered. I can understand everything, he corrected. The distinction mattered again. It always did with him. Emily leaned in slightly, her fingers hovering just above the surface but not touching it. What am I looking at? She asked. Flow, Alexander replied. Every decision made within the city creates movement. Every movement affects something else. As he spoke, one section of the display shifted, a cluster of lights adjusting in response to something unseen. And when something disrupts that flow, he continued, it must be corrected. Emily felt a quiet tension build in her chest. Corrected how? She asked. Alexander did not answer immediately. Instead, he gestured slightly, and one of the figures from the perimeter stepped forward. The same woman from before. Calm. Precise. Controlled. Sector 12 has stabilized, she said, her voice even. The deviation has been resolved. Emily's eyes flicked between them, confusion mixing with something deeper. Deviation, she repeated. Alexander's gaze remained on the display. An imbalance, he said. Temporary. Now removed. Removed. The word echoed faintly in her mind, but before she could question it further, the display shifted again. This time, a different section brightened, pulsing faintly, irregular. Not smooth like the rest. Not aligned. Emily pointed without thinking. That one, she said. It looks different. The woman's eyes moved instantly to where Emily indicated, her expression sharpening just slightly. It was not flagged, she said. Alexander did not look surprised. He looked interested. Slowly, he turned his head toward Emily, his gaze steady, focused in a way it had not been before. Why did you notice it? He asked. The question caught her off guard. Emily blinked, glancing back at the display, then at him. I do not know, she admitted. It just felt wrong. Silence followed. Not empty this time. Charged. The woman beside them did not move. The others in the room remained perfectly still. Waiting. Watching. Measuring. Alexander stepped closer to the table, his attention now fully on the irregular pulse Emily had pointed out. For a brief moment, the calm precision in his posture shifted into something sharper, something more focused. "Expand that section," he said. The display responded instantly, the area enlarging, revealing more detail, more movement, more instability hidden beneath the surface. Emily felt her breath slow as she watched the pattern unfold. It was subtle, but undeniable. Something was out of place. "You were not supposed to see that," the woman said quietly, not as an accusation, but as a fact. Emily looked at her, a faint unease settling in her chest. "I was not trying to," she said. "I just did." Alexander's gaze did not leave the display. "Exactly," he murmured. That word again. "Exactly." It echoed differently this time. Not confirmation. Recognition. He turned to her fully now, his expression no longer just calm control, but something deeper, something that carried weight. "Do you understand what that means?" he asked. Emily hesitated, the answer forming slowly, uncertain but unavoidable. "No," she said honestly. Alexander held her gaze, unblinking, unwavering. "It means," he said quietly, "you are not here by accident." The room seemed to still around them. Even the faint movements within the display paused for a fraction of a second, as if acknowledging the shift. Emily felt something tighten in her chest, not fear, not exactly, but something close to it. Something that felt like the edge of a truth she had not been prepared to face. Behind her, the others remained silent, but their presence felt heavier now, more focused. No longer just observing Alexander. Observing her? And for the first time since she stepped into this world, Emily realized something that made everything else fall into place. She was not just part of this system. She was changing it. "Say it," Alexander said quietly, his eyes locked onto hers, not forcing, not demanding, but leaving no space to avoid what had already begun to form inside her mind. Emily felt the weight of the room press in, the silent figures, the glowing city beneath the table, the subtle shift that had followed her single observation. Her throat tightened slightly as she looked back at the irregular pulse still flickering on the surface. "It means I can see what you see," she said slowly. Alexander did not move. "No," he replied. "It means you can see what others cannot." The difference settled deeper than she expected. Emily's gaze flickered back to the display, her heartbeat steady but louder now, echoing in her ears. "That does not make sense," she said. "You have been doing this for how long? And I noticed something your system did not." The woman beside them remained still, but her presence sharpened, as if the question itself carried weight. Alexander's expression did not change, but something in his eyes shifted again, something that looked almost like certainty being confirmed. "This system is precise," he said. "It follows patterns. It recognizes repetition. It predicts outcomes based on structure." Emily frowned slightly. "And I do not." "You do," he said. "But not the same way." Silence followed, heavy but focused. Emily drew in a slow breath, her mind racing through everything she had seen, everything she had felt since stepping into this place. "So what does that make me?" she asked. The question hung there, fragile but necessary. Alexander stepped closer, the faint glow from the table reflecting subtly against his features, making him look even more distant from everything human. "That," he said quietly, "is what we are about to find out." The display shifted again without being touched, the irregular section expanding further, revealing deeper layers beneath the surface. Movement became clearer. Not random. Intentional. Emily leaned in slightly, her eyes narrowing as she focused on the pattern, her thoughts aligning with something she could not fully explain. "It is not just imbalance," she said. "It is hidden." The words came out before she could stop them. The woman beside them reacted instantly, her posture tightening just slightly. "That is not possible," she said. "Nothing bypasses the system unnoticed." Emily did not look at her. She kept her focus on the display. "It is not bypassing," she said. "It is blending in." That changed everything. The room went completely still. Even the faint hum beneath the surface of the table seemed to quiet for a fraction of a second. Alexander's gaze sharpened, locking onto the exact point Emily was watching. Slowly, deliberately, he reached out and made a single adjustment. The display responded, isolating the pattern Emily had identified. And there it was. Subtle. Precise. Hidden within normal movement. Something that should not have been invisible, but was. She is right, Alexander said, his voice low, controlled, but carrying a new edge beneath it. The woman did not speak. She did not need to. The realization had already settled across the room. Emily felt it, the shift in attention, the silent recalibration of every presence around her. She straightened slightly, her chest tightening as the weight of what she had just uncovered began to sink in. "What does it mean?" she asked quietly. Alexander did not look away from the display. "It means," he said slowly, "someone has learned how to move inside the system without being seen." The words carried a different kind of tension now. Not controlled. Not contained. Something closer to disruption. Emily's pulse quickened. "And that is bad," she said. It was not a question. Alexander finally turned to her, his gaze steady, unshaken, but deeper now, more focused than before. "It is not supposed to be possible," he replied. That was worse. Much worse. Emily swallowed, her mind racing again, but this time with a sharper edge. "And I saw it," she said. Alexander nodded once. "You did." The confirmation settled into her like something irreversible. Behind her, she could feel the others again, their attention no longer just observing, but weighing, recalculating her place within something far larger than she had imagined. Emily looked back at the display, at the hidden movement now exposed, at the fragile balance that suddenly did not feel as stable as it had moments ago. "So what happens now?" she asked. The question carried more than curiosity. It carried consequence. Alexander held her gaze for a moment before answering, his voice calm but carrying a weight that made the entire room feel smaller. "Now," he said, "we find out who has been hiding in my city." The word settled heavily, but Emily felt something else beneath them. Something unspoken. Something that made her chest tighten just slightly. Because deep down, she already knew one thing. Whoever was hidden there had just been exposed by her. "No one moves until we understand it," Alexander said, and this time his voice did not just settle into the room, it locked it. Every figure around them responded instantly, not with motion, but with stillness so precise it felt deliberate, controlled down to the smallest breath. Emily stood where she was, her eyes fixed on the exposed pattern within the display, the hidden movement now impossible to ignore. It pulsed faintly, blending in again the moment it was not actively isolated, like something aware of being seen. That detail alone sent a quiet chill through her chest. "It is adapting," she said before she could stop herself. Alexander's gaze shifted back to the display, sharp, focused. "Explain," he said. Emily stepped closer, her attention narrowing, her thoughts aligning in a way that felt both unfamiliar and completely natural. "When you isolate it, it becomes visible," she said slowly. "But when you step back, it disappears into everything else. It is not just hiding. It is reacting." The room absorbed her words. The woman beside them spoke again, her tone steady but carrying a new edge. "The system does not support reactive concealment," she said. "It is not designed to be bypassed." Emily shook her head slightly. "It is not bypassing," she repeated. "It is using the system itself." That changed the tension in the room again. Not louder. Deeper. Alexander reached forward, making another precise adjustment. The display responded, layering additional data over the section Emily had identified. Movement patterns, timing sequences, structural flows. And there it was again, hidden within everything, not breaking the system, but moving perfectly with it. Too perfectly. "It is synchronized," Alexander said quietly. Emily nodded, her eyes still locked onto the shifting lines. "Yes. It knows how everything moves. It is not avoiding detection. It is becoming part of the pattern. Silence followed. Heavy. Focused. This was not just a flaw. This was intent. That means someone designed it, the woman said, her voice lower now. Not uncertain. Concerned. Alexander did not respond immediately. His attention remained on the display, but something in his posture had changed, something sharper, more alert. Not someone, he said finally. Something. The word landed differently. Emily felt it settle deeper than anything else that had been said. Something meant this was not just a person moving through the city unnoticed. This was something that understood the system at a level that matched, or even exceeded, its design. Her pulse quickened slightly. And it has been here the entire time, she said. Alexander glanced at her, just for a second. Yes. The confirmation was immediate. No hesitation. That meant this was not new. It had been there, moving, shifting, blending, unseen. Until now. Emily stepped back slightly, the weight of that realization pressing against her chest. Then it knows we see it now, she said. The room went still again. Completely still. Alexander did not deny it. It will, he said. Not if. When? The display flickered faintly, almost imperceptibly, but Emily saw it. The pattern shifted, not dramatically, not enough to alarm someone who was not looking for it, but enough. Enough to confirm her fear. It is already changing, she whispered. The woman beside them moved slightly for the first time, her posture adjusting, her attention locking even more tightly onto the display. We should contain the sector, she said. Limit movement. Restrict flow. Alexander did not respond right away. His gaze remained fixed, calculating, measuring something far beyond what Emily could see. Then, slowly, he shook his head. No, he said. The word was quiet, but absolute. The woman stilled again. If we restrict it, he continued, we alert it. Emily understood that immediately. It will disappear, she said. Alexander nodded once. And we lose it again. Silence returned, but it was different now. Not just tension. Strategy. Decision. Emily looked back at the display, at the shifting, blending pattern that now felt alive in a way she could not explain. Then what do we do? She asked. This time, Alexander turned to her fully, his gaze steady, unwavering, carrying something new beneath it. Not just control. Expectation. We let it move, he said. Emily's breath caught slightly. That sounds dangerous, she replied. It is, he said. No hesitation. No denial. Just truth. The honesty of it grounded her more than anything else had. Then why would you allow it? She asked. Alexander held her gaze, and for a moment, the room seemed to narrow to just the two of them, everything else fading into the background. Because it has already revealed something more valuable than its location, he said. Emily frowned slightly. What? Alexander's voice lowered, not in volume, but in depth. That you can see it, he said. The words landed with quiet force. Emily felt her chest tighten again, not with fear, but with the weight of being seen in a way she had never experienced before. Not as weak. Not as lost. But as something else entirely. Behind her, the others remained silent, but their attention had shifted again, no longer just observing her actions, but recognizing their meaning. The display continued to move, the hidden pattern blending, adapting, waiting. And for the first time since this began, Emily understood something that made everything else fall into place. This was not just about finding what was hidden. This was about why she was the one who found it. Then stay close to me, Alexander said, and this time the words were not a command to the room, but to her alone, quiet and controlled, yet carrying a weight that made everything else feel secondary. Emily did not respond immediately, but she felt the shift, not in the space around them, but within herself. The fear that had followed her into this place had not disappeared, but it had changed shape. It was no longer about escaping. It was about understanding. The display continued to move in front of them, the hidden pattern slipping in and out of visibility like something aware of its own existence. Emily kept her eyes on it, her mind working faster now, sharper, as if something inside her had aligned with the rhythm of what she was seeing. "It is not just moving," she said slowly. "It is choosing when to be seen." Alexander glanced at her, his expression unreadable but focused. "Go on," he said. Emily took a small step closer to the table, her hand hovering just above the glowing surface. "It reacts when we isolate it," she continued. "But it also waits. It does not panic. It does not disappear completely. It stays within reach." The realization settled in her chest as she spoke it aloud. "It wants to be followed." Silence followed her words, but it was not disbelief. It was recognition. Alexander's gaze returned to the display, his focus narrowing further. "A lure," he said quietly. Emily nodded once. "Yes." The woman beside them shifted slightly, her voice steady but carrying a new tension. "That implies intention beyond concealment," she said. "It implies strategy." Alexander did not deny it. "It implies invitation," he corrected. The word landed differently. Emily felt it immediately. Invitation meant this was no longer just something hidden within the system. It was something engaging with it. With them. Her pulse quickened slightly. "So if we follow it," she said, "we are doing exactly what it wants." "Yes," Alexander replied. "And if we do not," she continued, "we lose it again." He nodded once. "Also yes." The balance of the situation settled between them, precise and unavoidable. Emily looked back at the shifting pattern, her mind moving through possibilities, outcomes, risks she could not fully measure but could somehow feel. "Then the only way forward is to follow it," she said. It was not confidence. It was clarity. Alexander turned to her fully, studying her for a moment, not as someone uncertain, but as someone who had just stepped into understanding without being guided there. "You are learning quickly," he said. Emily exhaled quietly. "I do not have a choice," she replied. A faint pause followed, then something subtle changed in his expression, not soft, not warm, but something closer to acknowledgement. "No," he said. "You do not." The display pulsed again, the hidden pattern shifting slightly, moving across sectors in a way that now felt deliberate, almost rhythmic. Emily tracked it with her eyes, her focus narrowing. "It is leading somewhere," she said. "It is not random movement." Alexander made a small adjustment to the display, allowing the path to extend further, revealing a faint trajectory that cut across the city in a way that avoided direct intersections but never fully disappeared. "It is guiding us," he said. Emily's breath slowed as the path became clearer. "To what?" she asked. Alexander did not answer immediately. He watched the movement, measured it, followed its progression until it began to converge toward a single point. A location that stood out not because it was hidden, but because it was central. Connected. Important. "To a place where it believed we will understand it," he said. Emily felt a quiet chill settle into her chest. "Or where it understands us," she added. That made him pause. Just for a second. But it was enough. The room remained silent around them, every present still, waiting, aware that something larger than a simple disruption was unfolding. Emily looked back at the display one more time, then at Alexander, her voice steady despite the weight behind it. "Then we go there," she said. It was not a suggestion. It was the only path left. Alexander held her gaze, and for the first time since this began, there was no distance in it. No calculation. Just decision. "Yes," he said quietly. The word settled with finality. The display dimmed slightly as the path locked into place, the destination now clear, the hidden presence no longer just a mystery, but a direction. Emily felt her heartbeat steady, not because the situation had become safer, but because she had stepped fully into it. There was no turning back. Not from this. Not from him. Not from what she had become part of. As the room remained still and the city continued to move beneath them, one truth settled into place with absolute clarity. She had entered this world to escape something. But now, she was the one being followed. And whatever waited at the end of that path, had been waiting for her.